Thank y'all. I was watching the folks back in the back. Didn't want to start unless those people were ready. They're kind of important. So, welcome everybody to our regular board meeting for the month of September. We always start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. Tonight, we are delighted to have not one person, but a family, the Moose family, who will get some recognition later on also.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. And then after the pledge, we have recognition. We've got some outstanding recognition tonight. And George, I'm going to turn it over to you for that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Russick, members of the board. Tonight I'm assisted by Ms. Watts that will be helping with recognitions. So good to see all of you this evening. First of all, I'd like to recognize a student, and I'm going to let Ms. Allison Smith, though, do that. Coming up, one of our high school students. So Ms. Smith, our principal of Midway High School, would you come forward, please?
Thank you, Dr. Kazanis. Can I get Josie Sim to come up front real quick? So as a sophomore at Midway High School on the debate team, Josie Sim placed 6th at the 2021 6A State UIL Lincoln Douglas Debate Competition, which was held virtually at the end of May. Josie was coached by Ms. Susan Jones, and I believe she's here this evening. So Ms. Jones, if you'll go ahead and come forward. And tonight we would like to congratulate you and your achievement representing Midway High School at State UIL virtually, which is twice as hard. And we can't wait to support you and the debate team through this year's competition as well. So congratulations.
Congratulations. And one more round of applause for Josie Sims. All right, and now it's my distinct pleasure to recognize a very, very important group. And this is our 2021 Campus Teachers of the Year. So we would like to take this moment to congratulate them. We're very proud of all of our teachers and their dedication to serving our students and families, of course, especially during this past year and a half during this pandemic. These are educators who are thriving, and we appreciate your efforts so very much. So I'm going to start with our district teacher of the year, from the elementary level, and that is from Castleman Creek Elementary School, and that's Kim Daughtery. Where's Kim? Miss Daughtery. Next, I'd like to recognize Jennifer Brewer from Hewitt Elementary School. Next, from South Bosque Elementary School, Jessica Hogg. From Spiegelville Elementary School, Mandy Rogers. From Spring Valley Elementary School, Kelly Capron. Kelly. And from Woodway Elementary School, Cameron Petrie. From River Valley Intermediate School, Andra Spearbrecker. Say that correctly. And Woodgate Intermediate School, Miss Amy West. From Midway Middle School, Paige Morris. Congratulations. And from Midway High School, Sarah Berry. And one more from Midway High School, who is also the District Secondary Teacher of the Year, and that is Crystal Moose. All right, let's give them a round of applause, though, because 100% attendance tonight. Way to go, Teachers of the Year. That is why they're Teachers of the Year. Look at Tracy Marlin, please, for a group photo. All right. Everybody good? Family, you get pictures? Everybody good? All right. All right. They're much more comfortable in front of their students, aren't you? So thank y'all very much. Congratulations to our Teachers of the Year. And so now it's my special pleasure to also reintroduce to you Crystal Moose, who is, of course, a Midway High School chemistry teacher. And she advanced in the competition and was named the Region 12 Secondary Teacher of the Year. So come on back, Crystal. Just stand right there. And now I would like to introduce to you Charlene Simpson. She's Deputy Executive Director of the Region 12 Education Service Center here in Waco. So Charlene, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. I just want to congratulate you and actually all of the Teachers of the Year. It is such a wonderful thing to be nominated by your peers and your principals, and that is such an honor in itself. And Crystal, we are particularly proud of you as the Region 12 Secondary Teacher of the Year this year. And I have several things for you tonight. I have a plaque for you. That's for the Secondary Teacher of the Year. And also, I have two letters, one from Charles Doc Anderson, representative, Texas House of Representatives, for you, and also a letter from Senator Brian Birdwell congratulating you that we'll give you tonight. And then a special certificate from the legislature of the state of Texas. And this is from both Senator Birdwell and Representative Doc Anderson. So have those for you. And then in addition to that, because every teacher needs some stuff, I have a backpack full of goodies for you. There are some things that every teacher would need, some sticky notes, all kinds of swag in there, and some gift cards in there for you as well. So we appreciate you very much. And here's the big bag.
We'll be assisted by Mr. Witt here too, but also Ms. Moose, you have a banner in your honor. Go that way. And there are two banners so that one can be hung at the high school. So Mr. Wheeler, Ms. Smith, please display that proudly. And the other one, we're going to hang it here. And then, of course, you can have both at the end of the year when your reign is over. And your children will just love having those, I'm sure, inside their rooms to remind them, right? How special their mom is. So, excuse me. So let's see. I want to make sure there are a couple of other things I know Charlene mentioned to you. It's our certificate, but again, the letter from Doc Anderson, it also comes with this fantastic proclamation. Oh, cool. From Doc Anderson. And then you were, of course, in the newspaper. Make sure you have that and keep it as a keepsake. And one more certificate.
All you do on the board and our administrators, because really we can't do it without the support from parents, students, administrators, all the way up, all the way down. When we work together, we're going to make more teachers being able to do this. So thank you guys for supporting us.
You bet. You bet. All right, yay. All right. And while they're wrapping that up, just a couple of notes about Miss Moose. She has been teaching for 12 years. She was chosen for this regional honor from 77 school districts across the Region 12 district area. A community leader, a professional learning community leader, serves as a coach for the science fair and science UIL, and just, again, such an outstanding teacher. We're so proud of you, and congratulations to you and to all of the Moose family. You bet, you bet. All right, I have one more special recognition this evening, and this is our TASB Business Recognition. And I'm here tonight to recognize Howmet Aerospace Foundation. And joining me is Miss Susie Pagel, as you know, our Executive Director of our Education Foundation. But the Howmet Aerospace Foundation is recognized for standing up for public schools through generous support and financial assistance. I'd like to welcome Donna Griffin, our HR Director from Howmet. Thank you, Donna, for being here. They have been a generous supporter of Midway ISD and the Education Foundation through several major grant programs enriching the education of all of our students. Even before their establishment as Howmet Aerospace, the local Waco office has supported the foundation for almost 20 years by donating, get this, more than $100,000 to provide support for major classroom programs. So long established relationship. We appreciate you. A recent example of a gift from Howmet came in 2020. A $20,000 grant was provided to create a girls' STEM club at Woodgate Intermediate School to explore science-related topics, concentrating on water conservation activities and providing a campus-wide virtual science STEM night for all Woodgate families. So, and this club is still functioning to this day at Woodgate. Again, the generous grant opportunities given to the foundation have provided transformational learning programs for our students. We're very grateful for Howmet's investment in our public schools here in Central Texas and here at Midway ISD. So, Ms. Moose, science, they love science, just so you know. Just so you know. And all of our teachers over here. But again, please join me in congratulating Howmet Aerospace and Donna Griffin. And I'll get those awards. All right. And that concludes our recognitions for the evening. You bet.
Congratulations again to Josie and to all our staff members, and thank you to Howmet. That's just an incredible amount of support, and I know it's really important to our staff and all of our students what the Education Foundation does through generous donations like that. For those that want to stay, you're welcome. For those that want to leave, I don't blame you. The cool front came through, and yeah. Give these folks just a second. Okay, so information items, we've got two there. Does any board member have any questions about those or reason to take them up? And if not, we'll move on to the presentation discussion items. So, first presentation discussion item, our bond construction update. Buddy, that's you, I know.
Mr. Russick and the rest of the board. Again, I say thank you for all that you do. I think everybody in this room knows that your leadership filters down and makes us a great district. The CTE edition, the work continues. If you've gone by there and you see it, it won't be long and that project will be in the dry. The Ag Shop edition, as you know, we started school in there this year, and so that's finished except for there's a few punch list items that are still being worked out. River Valley, if you haven't been by there, you should drive by there and look at that. It's really progressing. Most of the waterproofing has gone up on the outside. Most of the stud walls are up inside, and a lot of the masonry work has begun on the outside. We'd had some done on the inside. The ITC building, moving very fast. The roof is on, the walls, the studs are up inside. A lot of the plumbing is done, a lot of the electrical's done. It's just progressing nicely. And the new elementary, Park Hill Elementary. If you haven't driven by there, you need to do that. In the past couple of weeks, they've really made a showing on the amount of steel that has been erected. You can see it now off of Warren Road. As you're going up Warren Road, you can see the school now. That's kind of a neat view. Phase 1 at Woodgate has finished, except for a few punch list items. We moved the students and teachers over into that part of the building over Labor Day weekend. We used Target Restoration to help us with that move, and that worked out great. Thank you, Wesley. And that project, we turned back a little over, somewhere around $300,000 that we had put in contingencies and allowances that we didn't use. So that was good. So they've started on phase 2, and the part of phase 2, some of it is the outside work. So if you go by there, you'll see the front parking lot is shut down, and they've torn part of the awning off that was on the front. It already looks much better just with that stuff gone off the front of it. But the plans are to have that outside work finished by spring break and the front offices finished by spring break, and let the school move into that front part at spring break. The front offices, the library and stuff won't be done then. But the middle school renovation, we are continually having meetings to refine the plans on that. There's an item on your consent agenda to approve a CMAR for that project. We're ready to get them on board so they can start helping us figure out how to phase that project. It's going to be difficult because there's still going to be about 1,000 kids there as we're going through the renovation. So we're going to have to phase it. And a lot of the work has to do with the cafeteria and the kitchen, and it's probably more work than we'll be able to get done in one summer. So we have to develop a plan of how we're going to handle that. We're getting some ideas together. We're actually meeting tomorrow to discuss some of that. Walker Partners has started on the Spring Valley driveway project. Still in the initial stages. They're looking at the geotechnical information and all that. I talked to Jacob about it after the last meeting, and he doesn't think we'll be able to get it done before Christmas. There's just no way. So possibly in the spring. Any questions?
The ideas for feeding the kids at the middle school with the cafeteria being remodeled.
Possibly, like maybe shutting it down late spring and feeding them in one of the gyms with brown bags, bringing the food over from another campus. That's just one way we've thought, or who knows,
Looked at end of the spring and then maybe at Labor Day, that gives us a little bit longer. Looking at catering, if you will, from the other cafeterias. Bring in food over. We also could look into the possibility, if we need it longer, as you know, we have at Castleman that nice portable unit that was there for the fifth graders. There could even be some that are small kitchens or mobile kitchens as well. We'll look into that, research that if that's something we may need more on a permanent basis there. But that's the difficulty more so of any of these projects probably is the middle school with, as Buddy said, 900 to 1,000 students still being on campus while we try to weave our way through the different renovations. So it'll be interesting.
And at one time in the past, we had portable buildings on that campus. They were over there in that gravel area right in front of Rice Field. And so some of that infrastructure is still in the ground if we had to do something like that.
A little kitchen at the stadium, what's the snack bar? I'm being funny out there at the rice field, yeah.
Yeah.
Feed them out of
Panther
that.
Stadium, so.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
The estimate was for Spring Valley for the
For the driveway?
yeah.
So we had broken it down into 3 phases. One phase was just to extend that current fire lane that goes around the building up to the front drive. And I'm gonna pull these numbers out of my past memory, so I could be off, but I think that part of the project was around 150 to 200,000. And then we had a second phase that would build a driveway back to Alpine, the street that runs back behind the school, because we own property all the way to that street. And I think that part of it was 200,000 to 300,000. Then we had a parking lot option too, that was like 400,000, 500,000 for the parking lot. So what we plan to do is maybe bring you proposals with here's option 1, 2, or 3.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Wesley, our monthly finance report along with the virtual school budget.
Evening. So for our August financial report, this is the last month of our 2021 fiscal year. The first page there, you see our statement of revenues and expenditures for the general fund. Over the course of the next several weeks, we'll make several journal entries and adjustments to the books to true up to actual. For instance, we'll adjust for state revenue, payroll accrual. Then our auditors will come at the end of this month, and they usually have a few entries that they'll suggest for us to make as well. But then hopefully by the December board meeting, we'll have the final financial report wrapped up and ready to present to the board. This is also the time of year where we start to look at our enrollment to see how we're projecting for the 2022 fiscal year. So pages 4 through 6 in the financial report just give a breakdown in a few different ways of what our enrollment looks like after the first 10 days of school. The reason we use the first 10 days is that generally gets us past Labor Day, and at that point, that we kind of know what our enrollment's going to be for the first semester. The first few days are always lower and it picks up as school goes on. So if you'll notice, our enrollment after the 10th day of class was 8,415, and I just count the students that generate state funding. So for ADA, that's 160 students more than last year. About a 1.9, almost 2% increase. While it is an increase, that's good. It is less than what we projected. Our budget was based on 8,489 students. But really, the bigger story is going to be our attendance. So last year, statewide, everybody's enrollment was down, and the state provided some hold harmless funding, to help make up that loss in funding from the enrollment drop. This year, what I've heard from districts all over the state is enrollment is moderately up from last year, but the attendance factor is way down because of course, COVID has been raging, and so you have kids out with COVID, but also quarantined. And so we'll wait and see. I mean, we're hopeful that the state budgets like we do, so they budget based on, they project increases in ADA across the state, so they have the funds to do some hold harmless, hopefully, but maybe after the first 6 weeks data, when the state kind of sees that, they'll be able to make a determination. If not, so we budget based on an attendance factor of about 96.5%. We're closer to, I think, 90%. And so if we stayed at that for the whole year, we would probably lose several $1 million. So hopefully, our attendance percentage hopefully will increase, but also we'll keep a close eye on to see what the state does. Page 5 shows enrollment on the 10th day of class by grade span, elementary, intermediate, middle school, high school, over the last 5 years. You can see the trends there. And page 6 shows our enrollment on the 10th day of class by campus and by grade. Our largest grade is the 10th grade. They have about 700 students. And that bottom chart on page, on page 7, is that what I'm on? Page 6. The bottom chart on page 6 there compares last year's campuses, 10th day enrollment, to this year's. It is a little skewed because of Woodgate. So all of the 5th grade at Woodgate is back in the elementary. So that's why Castleman, Hewitt, Spring Valley have so much more, and Woodgate has less than last year. Page 9 of the report is our projection. Again, about a $1.8 million projected surplus for our fiscal year 2021. And the final page of the financial report, page 10, is our virtual school budget and remote conferencing budget. So you can see there, salaries is going to be the bulk of the budget, just like most of our budgets. Some technology items, MacBooks, computer monitors, and then some other student resources, science materials, just different curriculum items. And the total is $400,000. And that amount will be funded out of our ESSER III funds. If you'll remember, we're getting about $4.5 million from that. Any questions?
Cost for the full virtual school, now that we know we can have more students, correct? Okay.
This is the budget for virtual school as well as the remote conferencing. Now, there are some corresponding with enrollment, and now that it is funded by the state, and that Dr. Odejima will go through in a little bit here in her presentation, but this is overall on the 90. That was some of our lower numbers. It's getting better each day. Yeah, that was some, but on average, it's still low because we were in the high 80s at one point too.
Okay. Other questions? All right, very good. Thank you, Wesley.
I'll just go up there.
You're going to go up there? Okay.
Yeah, it makes it easier.
So we'll take up the next agenda item, our future use of the bond funds for additional projects.
Okay, so always appreciation to Mr. Brooks for establishing this nice, handy, legible spreadsheet. It's kind of the Bible of the bond, if you will. And he's done a great job keeping up with each of the numerous projects that we had. Remember, our total amount was $148 million when we started all of this, when this was approved in November of 2019. And so in looking at that, you can see each project is just a quick reminder that our CTE project, as well as River Valley, Park Hill, and now all of Woodgate, Phase 1 and 2, have been, we have received the guaranteed maximum price for those. And so we have a good idea, estimates of cost to complete. Those have been accounted for, budgeted for. One of the things, too, is that, as you'll notice, underneath each one of the projects is we have other line items, most notable for FF&E, which is your furniture and equipment and things like that. So we're not, again, going to open without furniture and equipment, and it's budgeted for, and those are, again, estimates. And so I say that this isn't finalized because the 2019 bond isn't finished just yet. But again, we have a good idea of the construction cost due to the guaranteed maximum price being set, but also other budget drivers within these large projects. And so then at the bottom of remember, of course, with the ITC building, though, again, larger, we expanded that scope because we knew we had favorable variances. That's included, though. But Midway Middle School, and so as we've mentioned to you, it does have a budget, construction budget, I believe, of 10.6, if I can see that correctly. But we do anticipate the possibility of that being a little bit more based on our experience with Woodgate, its renovations. Renovations always tend to creep up a little bit. So at the bottom line there, as you can see that number, a little over $6.4 million. And then the interest income has been accruing since the bonds were sold soon after the bond package in November was passed. I think we sold them by December or January, and then those dollars stay in accounts to accrue interest. Lower, as you can imagine, for the types of investments we can do as a school district. But again, it has accrued to over $1.4 million. All right, so next page of this, just as a reminder, Mr. Freeman alluded to this, but again, this is information for you about the contingencies that are found in each project. There's both an owner's contingency as well as a contractor's contingencies. And so doing very, very well. I've been, as I said, in several this fifth bond package in my career. Never have we not had such healthy contingencies that they've remained like this is because of good planning, good work with Huckabee, planning these to begin with, having the CMAR process in place with your construction manager early on to help with this and with the planning stages. Of course, having Buddy and Ford Taylor continue to work through this, we are not, as you can see, really dipping in that much into these. This isn't set in stone just yet because we haven't finished. So again, this is just speculation, if you will. I'm saying where we currently stand. This does not include Midway Middle School and the contingencies we would have in it. But somebody read that number. What is that, 7.8? I forgot my notes on my desk right over there. Jumped up too quickly. $7.88 million are still available in contingencies. And that is our guaranteed maximum price on our projects. We don't know until the keys are turned over to us. There may possibly be a little bit more savings at the bidder end of each and every project. Because remember, you approved the guaranteed maximum. Okay. So, next one, Carolyn. This is a reminder to the board and to those in the audience and those listening tonight. We had a fantastic committee, remember? Facility Needs Committee, Facility Study Committee that worked really hard for months on prioritizing projects for this bond election. And so this particular slide just shows you each one of those. I believe the total number that we were looking at in August of 2019 was a little over $160 million. And to the board members, just remember we were looking at what would that cost the district, what's a good number. We did the survey with our community. We put all of these projects out there with that community survey, that third party that we had used, and saw which ones seemed to have strong support for approval of a bond, which ones then started teetering on lots of questions, if you will, about the approval. So this is just showing you again the overall categories. If you'll scroll, Carolyn, the next one for me. Again, this then became the rank order. And so the committee actually went through a long process to rank them and to decide what would be the highest priorities of this $160.4 million. And so those are clearly ranked 1 through 12. We were able to do most of those things, because on the next slide. We settled on, I know it's not quite $148 million, but we settled on a $148 million bond package with I think it was $0.015 decrease in the tax rate. And we went with the rank orders of 1 through 8. Okay? Any questions about that? Remember, harking back to those days, pre-pandemic. I know we had a COVID and pandemic during this, and remember, but pre-pandemic, this is where we were, and this is where we jumped in terms of our planning. The only deviation we've done since then, you'll notice on number 8 there was with our technology center, also expanding that for our Excel, which is the Horizon program now, things like that, and we, with the purchase of the building, and increase that budget.
Hey, George, remind me, number 9, the high school front parking lot addition, which didn't.
Go back to the other slide. Number 9 was already included. It was an alternate when we bid the CTE building, so it's been done. So
I know it was done. It didn't make the cut.
Yeah, but it
got done because of favorable pricing when we did the addition.
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
So we did number 9 already. So while we are there, we're looking then, of course, at some performing arts renovations was still on the list, equipment, technology in fine arts, as well as locker room addition there at Midway High School in athletics. And so again, those were some estimates at that particular juncture in time for the bond package. Okay, so do I have anything else, Carolyn? Help me remember. What's left? Okay, so in addition to that then this is in addition. So full disclosure, Spring Valley, the discussion about Spring Valley came up really, I think, from analyzing all of these campus capacities. It came about from rezoning. It really was taking a hard look at all of our elementary schools, with the exception of our smaller Spiegelville. How is there a way possibly to bring enrollment capacities common among the schools? Just as a quick reminder, Spring Valley's is, I think Wesley had that in his finance report, 560, 580 capacity of the number of students that are at Spring Valley. And so it is not significantly less, but less than our Castleman Creek and our Woodway Elementary, our Hewitt Elementary, which are at 640. So I began the discussion, just what ifs, with Steve Hafer of Huckabee, just to talk about what if, could we have the possibility of a classroom addition at 4 classrooms, as you can see there. That shows you possible locations that would bring that enrollment up to at least that 640 number. Just using like a 20, 22 to 1, 24 to 1 possibilities of students, about 88 students. So do the math there, you can see we could get right at 640 capacity. But my concern was the library. That's why there's a big dot there, the cafeteria. One of the things about remodeling you want to be very careful about getting into is if you remodel and start adding, then are you also going to have to remodel other spaces? Do we have the capacity to serve students? Do we have in the cafeteria, do we have the capacity to serve students in the library? So Steve helped me with that, and certainly we would. The library's large enough for 800 plus students. The cafeteria, it says 230 or so students at one sitting. 3 lunches would be 687. The stage, in which I know they utilize the stage as well, so we would have the possibility there to serve the students there at Spring Valley. And so that was just, again, from Mr. Freeman's discussions back about the drive. We've been analyzing that as well. That is not included in this discussion either, but the drives that we're thinking of including, and again, that just brought more attention, if you will, to the needs of Spring Valley. So, again, looking at growth, looking at the bond, looking at our objective that has always been part of this $148 million bond was to address growth for the future of the district and to, of course, address facilities for classrooms. And so that's why I wanted to bring that one up. I think the next one, Carolyn, is just shows the, a Google Earth type of view of where the possibility of those could be.
We would.
Certainly. Do you see this one
It
there?
would just
Yes.
extend on around.
Yes,
effectively.
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Thank you for bringing that up, Mr. Witt. Yes, those was another consideration. Could we still have a loop around the school? Would it interfere with that? And as you can see where those 2 red boxes are, that it possibly would not.
We currently have a portable building in place at Spring Valley, am I correct?
Yes, that's my understanding. Mrs. Edwards is here tonight, but I believe that first bottom red dot is where we have a portable. And one on the other end, too.
Would those go away if we added this extra space?
We'll see.
You would think
Mr.
so, yes or no?
We would think so. Yeah, one of the portables just isn't in the best shape. But the other one was brought in because of the 5th graders coming on campus this year. That's the one, the lower level one there.
Once we get rid of those, that saves us money on the use of those facilities, correct? Don't we?
Mr. Freeman, we bought those though, or we leased those? Help me.
We own those,
Yes,
okay.
so they wouldn't. That's why I'm saying sometimes some schools keep them maybe for storage or for some other
Gotcha.
reasons, things like that.
Hey, but we add on the 4 classrooms. Is that 88 students a net gain, or is that minus?
No,
the-
it's still a net. It's just
a
a,
net gain.
yeah, because we added the classrooms for 5th graders this year.
Right.
It would get us out of the portables, basically.
And bathrooms are okay?
You add
Yes,
more
and the
students,
bathrooms would
okay.
serve still the students.
Plumbing, everything's good.
Mhm. So what I did not give you is just a real quick, you might have already done it. I'm sure some of you have already done the math. But if you look at I called it the favorable bidding where we are. That was back to the Wesley Brooks spreadsheet. And looking that number was 6.4 and change million. Then you looked at our interest income, and then you look at today with contingencies where we are, not including the middle school yet, but we're still in the good, in the black, $15.7 million today, which is good. So that's why I'm having this discussion. Not decisions tonight. I'm not asking decisions tonight, but we just wanted some discussion about it because we're going to continue to bring this up. So bear with me now. So left to bid, I call it, items that still could, of course, affect our budget. The middle school, and as I mentioned to you with costs, I don't know. I'm just again using an estimate, but we might want to consider at least $1 to $2 more million in that budget. Because if you'll go back to Wesley's sheet, you'll see the construction budget was like 10.6. What was the final number for Wood Gates? Both of those, 13 point something. So it was a little over. But we did extensive work at Woodgate. We did the outside work, things like that. So we're very cognizant of that. Been visiting with the staff and with Steve Hafer of Huckabee about the renovation. We had done some renovations to the middle school in 2008 bond as well, so we're looking through each one of those. In fine arts, so Carolyn, if you'll go back one more with me, back to the page just that had the bond sheets back in 2019. No, that's okay. But those when I was talking about fine arts, one of those areas was I called it furniture or equipment, and the other one was some renovations to the PAC. And that totaled $1.6 million. Thank you, that's it. Performing arts renovations and instruments, equipment, and technology. And Mr. Umhofer's already kind of outlined, bulleted for me some of that item 11 there, what that might look like. The Performing Arts Center, though, would be included in the scope of work for the middle school. There's no reason we would bid or go out and have that scope of work remodeling the middle school. Y'all know the PAC is attached to it. And that primarily is reflected in lighting. Where is there? What is the PAC? Would you, Mr. Umhofer, remind us what is the major cost of the PAC renovation? We'll be at 30 years, and at 30 years, we'll have to replace all of our rigging, ropes and cables and pipes and everything that are above the kids' heads. And that's the majority of that. And an elevator to the pit, for the orchestra pit and things like that. That's not in use now. So again, that budget's there. It would just be added again. Again, that's in addition to what I mentioned, that $1 to $2 million additional dollars may be needed for the middle school's renovation. Okay, so bear with me there. That's that consideration. So you had the other sheet, right, Carolyn? If you'll bring back up the athletic one. Let's take a look at that. Mr. Hafer and Huckabee also been gracious and done a great job working with us on that plan, the what if plan, what if. We were able to include locker rooms, and or the other is an additional gym. We are, as a 6A high school, and growth of the high school and the growth of the number of students in athletics really are deficient in that area with the number of gym spaces that we have. We have actually more gyms at the current middle school, which was a high school, than when we moved over to the new high school in 2003. And so total there, you can see the gym, $3.6 million estimation. Locker rooms, almost $9 million there, 8.9. So, as I said, I don't have a number. Have not worked any numbers with Huckabee with estimates on Spring Valley for 4 classrooms. It does help that it's just classrooms in terms of cost. It helps a lot that we're not going in any other parts of the building, as Susan mentioned, plumbing or bathrooms or cafeteria or things like that, cafeteria and library. So that's very helpful for its cost. So I will be continuing to work on that number.
Guess what the Spiegelville, the Spring Valley? No. Okay.
Oh, I don't want to.
Okay, I just curious.
I don't. Maybe $1 to $2 million.
Okay.
I could have sworn he said maybe 1.25, but don't hold me to that. I got too many numbers swarming through my head. But we'll work on that as well. But again, so other considerations. So I mentioned Spring Valley to you. Other considerations, of course, that continue to come up. That at the end of a bond package, many of you that may not have been on the boards, when bonds get to the end, you can, again, the way they're worded and how they're approved, they're for other approved expenditures that you all decide to spend the dollars on. But we do have to spend them. It can't be transferred to the M&O, can't be transferred to pay down debt. That particular part of the bond needs to be spent. So there has been some discussions. For example, think about when, like this summer, we did the budget amendments. We replaced turf at the high school stadium. But one other piece of the high school stadium, when that was built and opened in 2010, is we do, we have a nice scoreboard, but not the electronic part. The middle guts of it, the electronics, is over 10 years old and no longer in service where we can get support for it. And again, that technology, just like your TVs, is changed. And so we wouldn't need to replace the entire scoreboard, but the middle is wearing pretty thin and is a critical area. The other is for our size school, again, it's 6A schools, is turf at baseball fields. And so that is under consideration as well. I think Brad Shelton's here, and I see Coach Kornblum, but I heard anywhere from 600 to 700,000. And softball. So baseball and softball turf, that's the infields, as Brad said, has been again brought up in considerations and talked about for renovations and improvements. And then finally, I get asked this a lot, and some of the elementaries do as well, and would love to do it, is to continue to upgrade and remodel our playgrounds at some of the schools that haven't had that yet. Some of them have had upgrades, or they're brand new schools and things like that, but it's always tough to budget and find dollars for some of the playground upgrades too, and so that's certainly a consideration. That's smaller, of course, than some of the other big ticket items that I mentioned to you. So again, if you wrote down the numbers, you can do the math on that. I mean, it just kind of depends. Would love to do it all. I'm not sure we can do it all, everything that I just mentioned to you, but we have a good chance to do quite a bit of this coming up ahead. And I think it'd be prudent. This is just me again. I can work anyway, but we really do need today, with Buddy mentioning in the consent agenda, hiring our construction manager, getting going on the middle school, and really getting a firm number on that to know where we're going and where that is set, because that was again a promise in the bond, and then after that's set with the GMP, then we're ready to go with the surplus dollars. So yes, sir.
We're like at 1.4 million now. What's our estimate for what that'll be? And I'm really looking at Wesley, not you, no offense.
Yes, sir. I mean, that's really a question. Interest rates, of course, are low.
Right.
But we really spent a pretty small portion of the entire bond package. So, I mean, I could see it doubling, maybe.
Good question. He didn't tell me that yet. So that's good question, Mr. Wilson. I like it.
From just the cost escalation that we're seeing in construction, and really just stuff in general, maybe getting some of these things off the board as quickly as possible and getting them locked in at current prices would help us down the road too. You know, if we kind of wait till the very end to start going shopping, well, our dollar's gonna go.
I wouldn't
isn't gonna go
recommend
as
that.
far.
It was just the middle school. It's our final piece, and we'll see our scope. After we get the scope in the construction, they can tell us an estimate. But before it's actually y'all approve the GMP, we'll know ahead of time. Are we on track?
Right,
And so
right.
that should come pretty soon. Yes, buddy. Is he watching me? He's probably. Oh, okay. I said 1.25. Okay. Okay. Next month.
Thank you, Stephen, be a buddy.
Thank you, Steve. So we're getting close to Mr. Tullis's point. Yes, we're getting close, and we'll know a good idea where that is, as he said, so we can start making some moves.
Well, I'm saying start spending some money now.
Yeah. Can someone refresh my memory? I think over the last couple of years, we've made sure sidewalks are covered at all the schools. Is that correct? We have covered area for kids to get picked up, dropped off.
All the new facilities.
I mean,
have-
all the old ones, that was a project we had for a while. Did we complete that? Do all schools have covered? Because if not, I think that's still important. But I think we do now.
Spiegelville does not. They have just a small awning in front.
Okay.
You have a little bit there at Spring Valley, not a lot. We did one at South Bosqueville's for the buses, not really in front.
Right.
The bus
But there is,
side.
I mean, at least they're covered, yeah.
Woodway, no, not much at
Woodway's
Woodway.
not? I
Nope.
think that's, I
No.
mean, I would
Not
like
much
to
at
look into
Woodway
that.
for awnings. Castleman Creek, no, for awnings. Trying to think outside. It's very little, just at front entrances, but not
Right.
along the.
I've thought
the
we'd
drives.
done more than
Uh-huh.
that since we did some of the schools.
But Park Hill sure does, and,
Well, I'd be interested if
Chapel
we have
Park
money
sure
to
does,
look
and-
into that
yeah, okay.
for the schools that don't have it.
Things too that I had heard, and I wasn't on the board then, so I don't remember if this was discussed, but there's, as we move to River Valley as a full middle school, are there still elements of that aren't? Obviously, they're not gonna have a pack there, right? I mean, the pack will still be where it is and will be used district-wide, but, so that makes sense, but are there things like lights at athletic fields and things like that that are included or not, or other things that we should look at?
We have done everything but the light. They
Okay.
have all the conduit pulled, it's a field, they have help me buddy again, storage room.
Storage building for all the equipment for the field, we're putting in conduit so that we can have a place to run the wire for the lights. The lights are not included.
And I'm just thinking about that as kind of an advantage for our kids as they work out and practice. I mean, I know that's a huge driver. I know the conversation for baseball and softball is making sure that those fields are available, we don't get rained out, things like that, so.
Yeah, but no, there was not like, it's certainly a field and all of that, they would play their games at Price. Yes, but everything else included comparable, yes, to both schools for fine arts and, gyms and athletics and equipment and all that is included.
So on the original bond estimate on 12, on the locker room addition was 9.8 million. So on the new one, it's 12, but then there's an option without the gym. So was the gym added to this? Because otherwise it would be less for the locker room addition, right? Okay,
It's 8.9 or so for locker rooms now, and 3.6,
so it's $1 million less.
3.6
Yeah.
for the second gym. Third gym, not second gym, third gym.
Third gym?
In a very strategic place at the high school.
If you can just visualize walking into the arena, right on the left, there's a field between the arena entrance and kind of football entrance.
Okay.
That's a perfect spot.
It was actually designed for a gym to go in there.
It was.
Okay.
Okay.
And remind me again of the locker rooms, if with the locker room addition, does it free up additional space for other things, or does it really just expand our locker
Sure.
room?
If you look at that, it's
capacity?
kind of hard to understand, but the plan would be to, I guess, dust back off the Midway Activity Center. It has, of course, the field, it has the weight rooms, and it has athletic office for Brad, but almost could be added on. It was designed that way, the locker rooms could be added on. So locker rooms for football would move, and all of the others would be, as you can see from this list here, remodeled for all other sports and reconfigured within the current school.
So these are what would backfill that space then?
Yes, sir.
In this
So
building?
everything, not every sport, it looks like, Brad, every sport would get a kind of a touch. Most sports would get,
Goes back to the rising tides lift all boats.
Mhm.
What football vacates, we would expand everything else. And basketball would be the biggest winners. Because right now, they're very antiquated, they've got 2 showers, things like that. They would be able to expand into a whole new locker room area for the varsity teams, particularly the program, been a real issue for us. So it would free up space for every sport.
Are we still struggling for locker room space for all the kids then?
We have kids sharing in
Yeah.
several of our sports, baseball included, softball now. Our basketball teams have to go to the PE locker rooms to shower because there's not enough shower heads. The same issues.
Yep.
Several same issues. Football kids are sharing. We don't have a freshman football locker room, JV locker room. We put half in each, so they're not all in there at the same time because one whole team can't be in that locker room at one time.
but they're expensive because they're plumbing. That's why, the price tag. But again, there is the need. We certainly have many more students participating than we did when the school opened in 2003, yet we haven't expanded, the facilities for that. So,
Can I add?
Sure.
When we originally talked about adding on to the high school for locker rooms, and when we went back and revisited it, it would cause problems, correct me if I'm wrong, but with the road, there would have to be some changes with the road entrance and exits and the well fields.
and the geothermals, yes.
That's why it kind of went back to looking at addition to the map. It saves some money there.
'Cause it-
Going back to Mr. Tullis's comment, I think when you look at the pricing on everything, the big ticket item is the locker rooms and potential gym. And we don't have enough assurance going forward how much money we will have to cover that right now. But there's enough money there to cover a lot of those other things. I'm in favor of somebody, I'm not saying who, need to prioritize this, and if the locker rooms and everything is the number one, then I think you gotta wait on that, because we might not have enough money to do all that, depending on what happens with the middle school, how that prices out, how these other, I understand we got guaranteed price, but that's including all the contingency money, and we don't know how that's gonna run. But depending on how you rank these things, I think Rick's right. I mean, the time value of money certainly says if we're gonna have $6 million left for sure, and I think we probably will, at least with everything combined. I'd be amazed if we didn't have that. I don't know that we'll have 15. If the number one priority is the locker rooms and the gym, we probably just have to wait, because you're not gonna know till we get to the bitter end of whether we got enough money to do that one or not at $12 million, because that's almost the entire 15, excluding the doubling of the interest, of course. So that's
So it's
my view on
complicated.
it.
It's very complicated.
It is, it is. But I think just like before, now that we've got all these other things in play, I think somebody's got to decide, you know, what's the priority now, and how do we go about it, if we're going to do anything other than wait to the end and see how much money we've got. And that costs us, and it's gonna, you know, cost us some money, just the time value and the escalation piece, if that keeps going the way it's going. Frankly, it might even go worse than that, based on what's happening right now with inflation.
So Karen, would you go back to the bond sheets for me one more time? I'm sorry, we can go back and forth. So to Pete's point, keep going, no, the other one, the bond packet, that one. So if you go back to the 100 and go to the next one for me. And maybe, well, that one could have worked. That's what we approved, and then the next one, I guess is what, yeah. There, yeah, the 160, go back, that one, thank you. That one there, then if it was brought up, we've done all of those, Rick brought up, we've done all through number 9. So we, in terms of, and we had the dollars to do all of those things. And so, in looking at that is looking at adding the PAC renovation. I think that, you know, again, would be wise with since the middle school hasn't been bid out yet, we don't have a guaranteed maximum price. It's next on the list. As I said, Daryl could, with equipment, can look at that at any time for instruments. I think that was really to help when we do move, correct me if I'm wrong, with 2 schools and 2 middles and instruments and things like that. It will come at a good time for splitting up the 2 middle schools. But to Mr. Russick's point about number 12, and then all the other things that I mentioned to you, it gets just kind of as my mom and dad would say when I asked for something, was wait and see, wait just a little bit longer. I'm not at all wanting to drag it out. I know we need to move fast, but we're really close of knowing what that middle school will cost us. And then I think an idea. I guess one thing I'm curious about, and then it can drop, you know, in terms of just curious of your thoughts about Spring Valley. I didn't hear much about that.
Yes, I'm all for adding on to Spring Valley if we can do that. I think that's an excellent idea.
I'm curious, one thought that came to mind on that was with the rezoning, did we relieve some of that pressure off of Spring Valley?
Well, we released some pressure, but if you look at
we created a lot of pressure in this room when we did rezoning.
Thank you for the memories.
Yeah, and I'd like to think we
what we did, if you look at it, I know again, I'm in those numbers all the time, but it did still show that side of town still with heavy, meaning it was beyond capacity at Park Hill pretty quickly too, because of the Park Meadow subdivision. So again, it's just a shifting of people. We may have to come back to that side of town and look at a couple zone changes in 5 to 7 years or something, but it really would help alleviate overcrowding at both Castleman in the future as well as Park Hill in the future.
Well, you mentioned something else too that I wanted to ask about, which is the timing of the band instruments technology thing and some of those things with the new middle school. Are there other elements that we're talking about that timeline should play a role? I mean, for instance, if we're going to build a gym, we may or may not do it while school's in session. If we're going to do baseball and softball fields, you know, they play in the spring, so we'd have to figure out.
So what, Daryl, you comment about just the furniture and equipment that's listed there, what's the timing of those?
No, I think you covered that one well. I was applying that to everything else.
Okay.
Like, have we looked at where things should fall in a calendar too?
Okay. Well, of course, the turf, yeah, spring.
Well, that's an example,
Yeah,
right?
that's a good example.
on the turf. Just a little bit about some of the justification there. What would the turf do for us, for the student athletes? What's that look like?
Well, if you know them, can I tell you a quick story about softball? And I think this will sum up the bulk of it. Last year, when the third round of the playoffs for softball, we had a 3-game series with Brian. Brian High is a good team. We have a good team. I think neither one of us could, play for a while. We're playing on Wednesday, first game at our place, second game at their place, third game at our place. So ours, theirs, ours. Tuesday it rains. Y'all know if you would drive, it does, when you drive, rains on your drive, it comes down and that creek floods. And it doesn't take a lot of rain. Well, it's no different from softball and baseball. Softball hits it, and then it trickles down to baseball. So not a lot of rain really impacts our play. So it rains on Tuesday, not a deluge, but a good little size rain. We call the weatherman, says the rain's done. We have 20 kids out there till 7 o'clock that night. Get the field ready for a Wednesday game.
The students are working on
I'm sorry.
the students were working on the field?
Students working, the whole team. Giving the coaches the day off, a school-sponsored sub that day, so they can work the fields in preparation. They get it ready. Weatherman was wrong, which sometimes happens. They get a little bit more rain that night, and we have to play our first game at the West. We're scrambling the next day, give up our home field advantage to go play at the West. After all the money we spent on it, and drying agents, substitutes, and the amount of kids that had to work till 10 o'clock that night to get the field ready. And that's not an exclusive story with softball. It happens in baseball. They had a playoff game that we were going to play at West as well, because West is turf. We tried to play at Waco because
What,
everyone's turf.
West is turf?
I'm sorry?
West is turf?
West and Waco. Waco's infield on baseball is turf. And it does not take a lot of rain for that to happen. But our kids do the maintenance.
How many other sports do our kids do maintenance on their facilities?
I don't think that is.
Okay, all right.
So the turf idea may be good, but what do we do about the drainage issue? I mean, that sounds like something else. I mean, can we talk to the city about that? Is that on our land? Do we need to do some ground, move some dirt?
I think it's just the flow of the land. You see that creek, that flat creek,
Yeah.
I think it's called. You see how much it floods with very little rainfall. It's just all that flows down. I think that's just the way it is. There's drainage underneath it, runs through the parking lot. That helps a little, but it doesn't alleviate it all. So that thing turns into a swimming pool pretty quickly.
Right. So maybe we need to think about fixing the drainage issues.
Well, I think the turf on the infield is the biggest issue for us because of the clay, the dirt. You just can't get on it.
Right,
Having that turf, it's not going to prevent all rainouts.
right.
But I think 90% of them, for sure.
No, I can see that. I mean, I can see,
Water in the outfield.
right. But we might as well also, maybe someone needs to look into the drainage issue, just so the turf doesn't get flooded if we do turf. So, I don't know, I'm just saying.
Doesn't it also give us opportunities for other income, like with other tournaments, or?
Sure, depending on, playoff situation. Right now, we don't rent our facilities out for playoffs, because they're typically playing. We've got, good baseball and softball programs. And I can't work the field. I don't have a team to go out there and track the field and get it ready and tank down home plate and the pitchers now. So we don't host currently while we're still playing. If it's turf, that's to turn the light switch on and let's go. So, typically, fields are rented for about $1,000 per game. You can get 3-game series. It's not going to pay for itself by rentals. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that. That just wouldn't be accurate. But there's a lot of hidden costs in turf that we save. Ty Harrington got inducted to the Hall of Fame last weekend. And we were just talking to him, they turf at Texas State before he retired. And he was reluctant. He said, I was reluctant. I'm old school. I wanted it. And then he turned and said, it changed my life. It extended my career. But we save money on uniforms. We save money on baseballs. Things that just get torn up on the dirt on the infield that, no one really talks about. Those are costs that, he's got to fundraise for, or we take care of in our existing budget.
Brad, would you say that most schools, 2K schools, is it 90% have turf, 10% how common is what we have?
It's getting that way for sure. I mean, you saw the Texas Rangers turf there.
At our level, though, in the vast
Right, but I'm
majority.
just saying, the major leagues, they're traditionalists. They're not playing on turf. It's just going that
So
way.
we're falling behind our peer schools.
Waco has them, West has it, Waxahachie has it. Whitney has it. I mean, Whitney's a 34A school, and we have to go there. That was one of our fallbacks for one of our rainouts, was to try to go play at Whitney. A home game.
Every tournament we play in, they're all turf fields. And we used to be able to host. We just can't
his infield is in a constant state of transition. We transition from Bermuda to ryegrass back to Bermuda. So in the summertime and in the fall, it's not a quality field. It's just not. If you go out there and walk it right now, this is the best it will look, and we're about to shave it here in a couple of weeks to put rye on. So in the summertime, when Five Tool and all those tournaments that he's hosted a few of them, we're not able to host those because of the field maintenance required, and our field is just not acceptable.
How long does a turf like that last? I know we were 10 or 11 years, right, at the football field?
About the same, 10 to 12 years is
Okay.
what I've got.
It's different now though, because now they have, you could put like my first base, second base, third, and home.
Places that wear out more?
You can zip them in and zip them out.
Okay, yeah.
Place them right there on hand.
Zip in, zip out.
Oh, that's good.
And it's safe for the kids, they're not more accident prone, or, I mean, more accidents happen on turf than on grass, dirt.
They're not tackling on it, at least, so
I
that's
know,
good.
well.
Hopefully.
Well,
Ankle injuries, you have
No,
all
you're right,
kinds of
yeah, you're right.
things.
So George, what, you know, what would be the difference about doing a budget amendment here, just like we did on the football turf versus doing it through bond?
Because that
It's
wasn't
just
bond money, yeah.
The vote of the board. Saying it, there's no different in it, no. It's
Yeah.
just if it is requested and we continue with estimates and using that aspect, then it would be then presented as a budget amendment, and that comes out of the fund balance
Yeah.
of the district.
Right, what's the maintenance cost? I guess you're not watering the grass, right? You're not fertilize.
No, well, we're still gonna have the outfield.
Sure, on
So I'd have the infield. So the estimates that I've gotten is for a full field. So a full baseball field, the annual maintenance, I mean, we're talking everything from water to labor costs, fuel, everything they can factor in, it's about $93,000. So once you go turf, I get an annual maintenance on it for about $9,000. They come and disinfect it, till it, the rubber, just redistribute, make it like new, stand with the fibers. That's not a necessity
So 9,000 versus 90,000?
for a full baseball.
Sure. So I guess for infield it'd be 5,000 or?
I can tell you, all the outfield signs you see at baseball and softball, those are about $500 a year, and all of that money goes towards field maintenance. And then we pay for a lot of the clay, maintenance department pays for a good chunk of it as well, Thomas is pretty good to us, but, I mean, we have to fundraise to fund the equipment. And it's a never-ending cycle. It rains, we pour drying agent on it, which is like pea litter almost. And then you have to turn around once it dries out, we have to put conditioner and dirt back on, so it's just a never-ending cycle.
We just ordered ryegrass seed, I think the ryegrass seed was $7,000.
Yeah, it's almost double this year, I believe.
Well, and all that,
Still ride the outfield, you know, but not the infield. It is, and last year, just the aesthetics of it, someone burned the infield with fertilizer. So we had to go buy green paint to paint large sections of his infield. So it's,
TikTok,
it still didn't play well, there's still a bare spot on the infield, but at least it
So
was
why
a
don't,
rich color.
Brad, why don't you want to turf the whole thing?
Well, we would love to.
Oh.
You to write a
Oh, $1.5
check.
million.
He just needs you to write a
Just gotta
check.
make a motion.
Slow down, people, slow
You
down.
didn't mention it, you have to mention it.
Go down
Okay, so
here.
here's what we're gonna do,
You have to ask.
because we don't have an action item for any of this is all discussion. If, a board member or the administration or whoever wants to have an agenda item talking about possibly amending the budget and what that budget amendment would be like and taking action with regard to these fields, that's for a future board meeting. Okay? So.
Thank you.
you've made a good case though, Brad.
Well, and again, I think this would be a better time to look at that versus a football scoreboard might be a not while we're in football season project or other things, regardless.
How fast could it be done?
About 35 days.
Wow.
About 36.4 days.
Understand though, we can't just go do it. We've got to go through the competitive purchasing process, and that's going to take another, Wesley, how long? You notice I'm not going to ask George that question,
Please.
Well, it depends on the vendor and how we go about procuring it.
but I mean, there's an advertising period of time. We got to come up with specs, advertise, get the proposals in, rank them, then come back to the board, Yeah.
From board meeting to board meeting, generally a month, of course, you know, between the meetings for
So we
approvals.
put it on the agenda for next month.
I'm going to take that as a formal request from Mr. Tullis, so when I meet with you that Friday, George,
It will be on the agenda.
thank you.
So any other questions about the other items?
Yeah, these other projects, folks, anything
One
else
by
to
one.
discuss
Let's go
about
through the
them
rest of it.
tonight?
I think we do have to wait, a lot of it is on the middle school to get a final number before we know what bond money we really have left. But this might be something to do outside of that, so, yeah.
I understand.
Because I would,
Do we ask them to go forward with Spring Valley with getting,
cost estimate, I
Yeah.
can do that.
Yeah.
I can do that for you, cost estimate, as you can, as I said, you have the additional gym, and you have the locker room cost estimates. As I said, I already have fine arts there for you. So, yeah, it would, at that point, be nice to talk about those and then have the same robust discussion about the need for the locker rooms and/or the need for the third gymnasium, too. I don't want to dismiss that.
No,
Because there's
yeah.
quite a bit of, a huge need for those items.
Yeah, I would just say if we had the money, I would lean toward the locker rooms first before the third gym. But,
Yep.
yeah.
Okay.
All right, anybody else on this one? Very good. Thank you, George.
You're welcome.
Appreciate the
Thank
input
you.
and everything from Brad, you and Eddie. Good discussion. Speaking of which, virtual school instruction plan, also a good discussion topic. Glad we're able to do this.
Good evening. We're back again talking about virtual school because since our last board meeting and presentation, the clicker stopped working. Not right now. When you let technology people come and present. Okay, so since our last meeting, the governor signed into law Senate Bill 15, which allows local education agencies to receive ADA funding for students who are in a remote learning program for this school year. So anytime there's funding tied to student attendance, there are also requirements. So tonight we're going to present those requirements and some of the constraints and considerations as we look at this process. So the first requirement is that the school board must adopt a policy that declares the instructional delivery method. It can be synchronous, asynchronous, or a hybrid of those two things. It also requires that a school district never has more than 10% of their enrollment involved in this remote learning setting. It also gives us the power, the opportunity to establish criteria, academic standards for our students that participate in this program, and then also ask that we create processes to move students out of the program if they're not academically successful. So in order to participate, a district must have an overall rating of a C or higher on our district accountability. We do. It needs to include, the program must include at least one star or end of course tested grade level, which we do. Our district has to provide an on-campus option, which we also do that. We're not a solely remote district. We're going to administer assessments in the same manner as we do for face-to-face assessments. That's those major district assessments and then also the state STAR EOC type assessments. Our students would come face-to-face for those programs as well. We need to provide opportunity for students to participate in extracurricular or UIL activities just as the face-to-face students do. And then meet the needs of and comply with federal law for our English learners and then also students with disabilities, which we have all of those pieces built in. The final piece is in regards to teachers who deliver that remote instruction. We need to provide professional development for those teachers. We ensure that no teacher is coerced into teaching remotely, and then no teacher has a concurrent teaching duty, so they don't teach face-to-face and remote students in the same class period. So we've set up all those guidelines prior to these standards, so we're in good shape there. There's also quite a few criteria for the students to end up generating this ADA funding. So this is where the sort of the puzzle begins. So in the previous year, if a student was enrolled in virtual learning 50% of the time, and we did have students who participated 50% who are now in our current program, then they must have achieved satisfactory level achievement on the end of course or STAR assessment for any of those assessments they were supposed to participate in for their grade level. If they didn't take the test, they can be given a local assessment that's TEKS aligned to make sure that they can pass the grade level standards. They also can't have had unexcused absences that's more than 10% for the school year, so that's that 90% must be present within the school day kind of thing. And then they must, this is a new criteria for us, they must have earned a grade C or higher in all of the foundation curriculum. So your core content, your reading, your math, your social studies, your science. And that's all if they participated in virtual school 50% of the school year last year. In addition to that, a student can only generate funding if in the current year they are enrolled in our school district, they have access to in-person instruction if they choose to do that, and then they have 10 unexcused absences in a 6-month time period. So they have to have fewer than those 10 excused absences. So tonight we want to present the virtual plan, and then there are some items in the consent agenda to approve or to adopt a resolution that's related to attendance for virtual students. So our proposal for our virtual school instructional delivery is an asynchronous model. This means that students can do work in their own time, but we also have synchronous meetings that are scheduled with the teacher for those students. You may remember that's our model that we carried out last year, and it was very effective in our elementary classrooms. And then students will have a planned 240 minutes of instruction daily. That's not something that we have to account for because we're using an asynchronous plan, but it is something that we want students to have comparable content minutes as if in comparison to their face-to-face peers. So they would have comparable instructional minutes. In our elementary model, students would work daily with their teachers in synchronous Google Meet. So we did this model last year. They met for whole group, morning meeting type instruction with all of their peers. And then they met in small groups and did synchronous guided math and guided reading lessons. We're going to continue that practice. Additional work is housed in the learning management system, either in Seesaw or Schoology, and so they carry out the rest of their instructional minutes through those asynchronous activities. In our elementary model, we've also banded those grades together because of numbers. We have a single teacher that has kindergarten and first grade students, another teacher with second and third grade students, and then a third elementary teacher that has fourth and fifth grade students. Our secondary instructional model is a bit different from last year. Last year, if you remember, our teachers were teaching concurrently. Well, that's no longer able to be done and probably not the best idea anyway. So this year, in order to carry out the required curriculum for our secondary students, we're using an online learning platform called Edgenuity. This houses the content and the courses that our students need for grade level requirements and graduation requirements. In addition to using that asynchronous platform, we have a virtual teacher who's responsible for meeting synchronously, so in these Google Meets, with our secondary students at least once every week to do progress tracking, check on attendance, provide intervention if it's needed at times, and just really help them work through the online learning platform. So that teacher is checking daily progress every day, checking attendance every day, checking student goal, meeting progress, and then that's going to help us stay connected with those students in that platform. The last piece here that addresses one of the criteria earlier, it says that students, the law says that students can participate in extracurricular UIL activities outside of their coursework just as a face-to-face student would. In our setup now, Edgenuity does not offer those extracurricular connected courses. For example, their fine arts credit would not be a performing art. It's not band or choir. Their art credit is an art class. So that wouldn't connect them with an extracurricular UIL-based activity. Same thing with our PE. It's foundations of PE, and so it's not connected to a sport class necessarily. There's no football or baseball in this Edgenuity platform. So at this time, we wouldn't have students participating in extracurricular activities because there is no course tied to those outside of school type activities. Yeah.
Okay, because it said we had to let them, okay.
You can, if we had football and Edgenuity, they would be able
Okay,
to
but because our
participate in an
program doesn't have
extracurricular
it.
football
Okay.
class, yeah. But we don't offer that now because
Okay.
we have a smaller offering of courses in this platform. So the other piece that we need to look at tonight is the attendance measures. Because of our asynchronous plan, we have several different ways we can capture attendance for our students. We want to take attendance during the regular school day, during those face-to-face hours that they would normally have attended school. That's when our teachers are going to offer those synchronous meetings, and so we want students to engage during that time. However, there are multiple ways we can capture attendance for ADA purposes. They can show progress in the learning management system, so that works great for our secondary students who are in this online coursework, and the teacher can check and see that they made progress that day for attendance. We can also collect attendance if a teacher holds a synchronous meeting. We can take attendance because it's a face-to-face interaction, and then they can also complete assignments and turn that in. This is very similar to the attendance policy that we used last year with our virtual learning. That was an asynchronous plan as well. So just to look at the numbers as they sit right now, kindergarten and first grade has 13 students enrolled, second and third has 17 students in their class, fourth and fifth has 14 students. Our teachers are listed there, and then secondary is being facilitated by Donna Jonigan, and she's got 32 students overall. So we have a total of 76, and then I have a waiting list of about 11 families that we'll look at moving forward with the budget approved. We can add a few more based on the needs of the students and then the spaces that are available within those grade bands, really.
Requirement if a student had been in virtual school last year for 50% or longer, they had to meet the grades, the test scores. Was there anybody we had to ask to leave the program once that came out?
So that's an excellent question. The way it reads, you would think that we have to move everyone out of that program if they don't meet the criteria. But many schools started this program back when the school year began, not after this legislation came out or the bill passed on September 9th. So the way that the law reads is that you don't receive ADA funding for students who don't meet the criteria. It doesn't mean that they can't attend the virtual school. And for us, our highest priority to begin with was the health and medical needs of students and their families. So we wouldn't necessarily ask those students to leave as long as they were keeping up with their activities and they were successful academically in the program. What we can use this year to supplant that is ESSER funds.
Okay, very good. I'm glad to hear that.
How many of our students don't meet the requirements for us to get ADA funding?
I think a third of the students enrolled now won't meet ADA requirements.
And is that primarily a performance issue, Becky, or is that an attendance issue?
It's a performance issue.
Okay.
And some of it, we accepted all students. So we have students with special needs, and we
Right.
have students that may be arted out of tests and things later, that even in a face-to-face setting, it would have been a very difficult criteria for them to meet. But we want to provide this environment for students that have, and families that have those health and medical needs. So we'll work with that. And fortunately for us this year, we have ESSER funding to help take care of any funding that's not fulfilled with ADA money.
Are we giving,
Will or a third won't meet
I don't,
ADA?
a third will not, of the
Will not,
76,
okay.
a third would not qualify for
Okay.
this
But
funding.
as you said, if they were in face-to-face instruction, they might not still meet these requirements.
right.
In any case.
That's very possible. And the other piece is, if they weren't, even if they didn't perform at that level, but they weren't in virtual last year, they wouldn't be scrutinized with this level of criteria.
The teachers are housed here in the building, or where are they housed?
The teachers, 2 of the teachers are truly remote, and then 2 of the teachers are located on one of our elementary campuses in classrooms that are available.
And I know that, the only other question on this is that, I know last year our secondary students, some of them that came through, there were some issues or questions about grades and GPAs and class ranks and things. So I'm assuming these 6th through 8th, 9th through 12th graders still fall in that same, with their class at the high school or middle school, right, in terms of grading?
Right, right. It's the courses that are offered don't necessarily have multipliers.
Right.
And so they'll receive a grade at the end of the semester, and it calculates with all the regular GPA calculations.
What is the max number we want to do now with this program?
I would like for the secondary, because it's one teacher who's facilitating weekly meetings with all of those students, I would like to keep her at 45 or under.
Okay.
So we have some seats available there. We could go up to 22 with the other classes, but I think it's going to become more and more difficult because they're teaching 2 grade levels of curriculum. So if it's under that, that would be better.
Okay.
But we certainly still have some space available.
So we're capped at like 80 something, 85?
Yeah, I think 90-ish, yeah. Oh, like for the state? No, 800.
840.
Yeah. We'll stay under 100, but we could go to 800.
100 milligrams, 10 milligrams, whatever.
What did he say?
Are you getting any requests from other districts that, want to participate with us, or?
Not at this time. Dr. Kazanis may have heard from other districts, but not at this time.
Do we know other districts in our area that are doing this as well?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
No one's doing it.
We're presenting tomorrow at Region 12. They asked, when Ms. Simpson that you met at the beginning, we have our monthly meeting with superintendents, and so asked about it, and I do not know of any, but there could be some starting virtual school after Senate Bill 15 passed, but I'm not aware just yet. And then nor on the remote conferencing. I know that's not here either, but there's a lot of limitations districts have with remote conferencing that we're doing as well. So that's, remember, keeping kids that are quarantined or with COVID, keeping them engaged. So we're really.
Is that going well, the remote learning?
I believe so. We've added a 3rd room to remote learning. We've averaged 200 students a day, which we never anticipated. I thought we'd have 40. And so that's been a surprise. But it's been really good. Like last week, we engaged like 1,046 students in remote conferencing. So that's over 1,000 students that may or may not have opened an iPad to look in the class assignments. And so our facilitators are doing a nice job of keeping them logged in. They turn their cameras on and take the attendance points, and we're collecting attendance and turning that in. My figures showed the Friday before Labor Day, before we started remote conferencing, we were at 86.6% attendance rate, and Friday, it was 94.3. So I think it's making a change.
Well done.
Conference last week for our 4th graders quarantine, and it went really well.
Good, thank you.
You can pick up the iPad, it's kind of an unplanned thing, but you just got right to work and went smoothly.
I think it's incredible to see 200 kids at home, but still online working at 8 and 8:30 in the morning. I don't think that would happen without remote conferencing.
If you'd like a chuckle, come by and listen to the questions.
Yes.
They're across from my office and where the remote conferencing teachers
Yes.
are. And the little ones' questions are just
The elementary rooms are quite
pretty
entertaining.
cute. That they ask.
Very cute.
IT questions, I was like, my computer's not working. And I don't know what the teacher was supposed to do to help.
Yeah.
A lot of it's, look, sweetie, at the ... open that, click on that first, and, they're doing a good job.
It is. We've also had the Innovation Learning Departments also run a support chat simultaneously, so when kids do ask lots of questions and have some trouble, they can switch over to the other Google Meet and get some one-on-one help from those folks. We've given more math lessons than technology lessons, so that's been interesting. So, yeah, thank goodness for Google.
You did a great job. Thank you.
I was watching Senate Bill 15 to make sure it passed, so I'm really glad we can do this.
Yeah, absolutely. We're happy to do it.
Thank you.
Thank you. High school scheduling initiatives for next year, ma'am.
All right, so Allison Smith's coming up, as you can see, and Jess Wheeler and Dr. Willis, and just wanted this particular agenda item just to update the board, kind of some of this we've actually, Ms. Smith talked about from our legislative update, some of the career technology issues and funding, and so I think it dovetailed nicely that you are talking about plans for next school year and schedules, so I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening, board members and everybody that's here to hear our presentation, but I'm just going to start a little bit with, this is not something that came up just out of my brain. This is myself, Jess Wheeler, Dr. Valerie Willis that's here, Dr. Ashley Knudsen that's in the back, Kim Booth, our lead counselor at the high school that's kind of in charge of student services. When we start scheduling for the spring, that process starts very early in the school year. And when I switch the slide, you're going to see that it actually starts in October. And that's when we start visiting with students. And so our big initiative that we're bringing to you guys tonight, just to kind of make you aware of what we're trying to think through, we've had a lot of different things that have changed over the summer where we've had to respond and turn on a dime, put kids in classes, remediation classes that we've had some, but that problem has gotten larger due to House Bill 4545 is one of the main key points that kind of leads us to this. But we do start guidance counseling. We visit with every student in every grade level every year about their 4-year plan. That's freshmen all the way through our 8th grade, well, starting 8th grade all the way through our junior class. Next month in October, we start with sophomores. They're our first group that we start with that will be the incoming juniors for next year. And so some of the things that we're wanting to include in this presentation tonight are just different pieces that we're looking at moving forward that we have to consider when we're talking to kids about what your plan is and where we're headed. And so the first thing, number one on there, is a multi-tiered support system for students in grades 9 and 10. And this kind of comes out of House Bill 4545. This also wraps around with something called RTI that you guys have heard about for years. House Bill 4545 is, in some aspects, a type of RTI. And so we're going to be trying to layer in some more supports for kids, specifically in the 9th and 10th grade, where we can hone in on skills, refocus them on their math. English really is our big focus so that we can get them, advancing at a higher rate moving forward. We're also looking at additional dual credit options that we could be layering in for students in their advanced higher track junior, senior classes. Opportunity for work program opportunities, which really is a piece that really folds in nicely to the next one, talking about our advancement of CTE pathways. We're going to talk a little bit here in a few minutes about, there was a new bill passed over the summer that layers in the funding. It's a tiered funding model for CTE classes, specifically in pathway completions. And so the district actually doesn't get the same amount of money we used to for those low-level CTE classes. And so that's a piece that layers in here as well. And then also just different opportunities for students via our New Horizons campus is where Dr. Willis kind of fits into this presentation. New Horizon, or the Horizons campus, is what Excel used to be. And so we're revamping that entire program, and she's going to chat with you guys a little bit about how that change is going to look in our new fantastic building that we're getting to move into. So just some things, these were the issues that just started glaring at us when we start looking into the school year. As of this morning, our current enrollment at the high school is a little higher than what Wesley had. It's actually 2,570. And so we're growing, we're full. We need the CTE wing to open sooner than later. And so it's gonna give us a little more room to flex next year. And so we're gonna be looking at ways to make our scheduling system flex a little bit more too. We are currently in an 8-period day traditional model, and right now what we're finding is some of the things we have in place diminish the opportunities for students to engage in bigger offerings, I guess is how the best way to put it. House Bill 4545 highlighted for us a need for flexibility. Currently in the elementary schools, they have something that's called win time, where when teachers see that a student's falling behind in a certain topic, they're able to kind of wrap around through RTI in the classroom immediately, throw them into a win period, and then they start working on whatever they're deficient in to help bring them up to where they need to be. At the high school, because we're tied to credits and class periods and all of those pieces, we simply just don't have that flexibility right now. One of the other pieces that we implemented in 2013, if you guys remember when we rolled out the 8-period day, we rolled out an opportunity for students to take release periods in their junior and senior year. And that has really, we did it because we were out of space. We didn't have space to put kids And if you know now, we're going to be adding about 600 seats in the new wing that's supposed to open next year, which will free up about 15 to 20 different classrooms where we'll be able to flex a little bit more. And so some of the necessities are no longer required at the same level to have enough students off campus. We'd like to really pump back into those career prep programs and do some of those pieces. And I'm going to shift over and let Mr. Wheeler take over.
And so as she talked about our schedule being a little bit on the inflexible side, just to kind of give you insight to what remediation looks like for a freshman coming into high school. About 1/6 of a campus of a freshman class coming in gets an extra reading and math class on top of what they already are taking in Algebra and English 1. And that forces them to lose 2 electives on top of that. The unfortunate aspect of that is that there is a direct correlation to those students that are remediated in both English and math to enrollment and graduation from our Excel program as it sits right now. Dr. Willis has a fantastic vision for what that needs to look like, and we want to be responsive to what that needs to look like from our perspective as we support her. And so when we look at this, we want to find ways for kids to connect, for kids to be able to take and find their passions at Midway High School. And when students in their 9th and 10th grade years are losing up to 4 electives between a 2-year period of time, they're not able to engage in athletics. They're not able to engage in fine arts. They're not able to engage in their CTE, places to find their career and college pathways. And so it's important for us to try to build some of that in, but we recognize that each of those students have skill deficiencies that we still have to meet. And so what we intend to do for this next year, for any student that's a incoming 9th grader or incoming 10th grader that does not have a meets or masters on all of their assessments, so they would be a did not meet or approaches, that student would be given a win time, a what they need or what I need, period, to support that student's needs. We can be able to support the math and reading that we're already doing in 2 different courses in a 1-period time. We're also able to support the House Bill 4545, which is the social studies and the science as well. So we're not having to do any of that stuff outside the school day, because we're already finding right now that students coming before or after school to get these mandatory tutorials is a struggle, because most of these kids are engaged, involved, working, et cetera. And so if we can build more of that in the school day, we're good to go. Students that make a meets or masters on their STAR test, they're going to go through their school day just as they've always gone through their school day. They're going to have 4 core classes. They're going to have 4 elective classes. We just want to be able to provide support to those kids that need that support. It doesn't have to be a comprehensive umbrella for everybody. And it will be the same exact thing for 10th grade students. We can also, for students that go through that win period, they don't need that intensive remediation. We can provide just general high school supports. There are a lot of freshman kids that just need high school support on how to get through the school. And we can wrap around all those services in that period and give us the flexibility to do what we need to do. And so that's really what we look at from a 9th and 10th grade perspective. The 11th grade perspective is a little bit different. And so we are looking to phase out some of our release periods. And it's fun, when you go through this process, you start looking at numbers pretty heavy duty, and you recognize that when we're looking at shifting for this next year, our 11th grade students, they can still utilize a release period by taking 2 or more advanced placement courses or dual credit courses. We'll phase that out in the 23-24 year. But when we look at our senior class, we're looking to move them to a 1-year release, which for next year, which is not all that different than what is already happening at Midway High School. Many of our students are engaged in so many other activities. They're not overly using that 2-release period. And so we're going to shift that back. That will remain in place. The 11th grade we will transition out of after this next year, but the 12th grade release period will still be something to grant seniors an opportunity to be off campus. But the opportunities that we get by doing this, we grant students an opportunity to engage deeper in our work programs, to engage in Panther Kids, to continue to work through Guamaguaca. We can still provide release periods, travel periods, as we've always done from that perspective. But the big deal is that we can encourage kids to dig deeper into these CTE programs, into their elective programs, so that we're getting a more comprehensive look for them as they prepare for college, career, whatever that needs to look like. And so that's really our big push for those pieces. And so to sum that up, just 9th, 10th grade, those that don't achieve a meets or above will have a win period. 11th graders can still have a release for next year. It will be based off their ability to have 2 or more AP and or dual credit. And then 12th grade students will still have a release on our current practices for next year. With that, I'll pass it to Dr. Willis.
Good evening. I'm so excited to present an update on our Horizons program, and I wanted to kind of give you a little history about the name. We surveyed our students and showcased the vision we have for the new program and asked them to generate name ideas, as well as our faculty. And we had each of them vote on their favorite names separately without knowing what was the favorite, and Horizons was the favorite from both groups. And then our district committee that has been helping us plan for this new program, we did not let them know what the student favorite was or the faculty, and they selected Horizons as well. And so I think this has a great meaning in the sense that when students start high school, they're on the beginning of their horizon of building their idealized future and making that a reality. And so I love when something has a figurative and a literal meaning. And so now we're going to go into some of the programs and options that we're intentionally planning on providing these students to make those realities doable. The first one, we worked with MCC, and we went out there to visit. We finished last week and collaborated with them on how can we provide our students some college experience in a proactive manner, recruiting a freshman class from the 8th grade class that's finishing this year, and thinking about when we went to college, we took basics. And so now that's called the Texas Core Curriculum. And those agreed upon classes transfer to any college in the state of Texas. And so we plugged those in as dual credit courses within the required courses of Midway High School. And so at the end of the 4 years, they would finish with their 28 credits, but also finish with their college basics. Now, if a student had a very clear vision as to where they wanted to go, those 12th grade electives could turn into options that they orchestrate to be an associate's degree. If they don't know what they want to do, they can enjoy some electives. Now you'll notice some gaps. It's not an 8-period day, and that's intentional. We would require that they attend tutorials because with MCC, they provide free tutoring in the dual credit classes as well as their high school classes. So that would be an embedded support in a smaller environment that helps them make that pathway and that transition to where they're headed after high school. The next option, we worked with Dr. Knutson, who's our CTE expert, and we thought, how can we develop a program or a plan where someone is looking at entering the workforce and they want some career experience? And so if you notice at the 11th and 12th grade, there's kind of a gap in some open spaces. Well, that's because the endorsement is a business and industry endorsement in which the coherent sequence of courses relate to the career and business world. So they would take an intro to business marketing and finance, but their math classes would be orchestrated around taxes, opening a checking account, balancing a budget, while that 11th and 12th grade year where Career Prep 1 and 2 is, they work 10 hours. They get 2 credits for that course, 1 for the course that they sit, and 1 credit for 10 hours in the workforce. So they can see the transferability of what they're doing in the class to what they're doing in the real world when they leave high school. Completing this degree plan still makes them able, if they decide they want to go to MCC or TSTC, they can still do that. It doesn't limit them. And then Excel has always served students that had unique needs. So we will not do that in the future. And I like to think of this as students with unique situations, because it could be a student who's new to Midway and who's a senior and wants to graduate on time, but they're credit deficient. But it could be our PEP program, which helps teen moms. But there's also students who are the sole income earner and their parents have cancer and they drive them to and from cancer treatment and they are providing the income for the family. And so keeping that flexible option for students who are navigating that difficult journey, I think is just going to be a robust system where we can provide responsive degree plans to meet the needs of our students in a building where our district social workers will be housed so we can provide wraparound support. And then I think our last slide is questions.
Question about the cutting of the release periods. And y'all have a better idea of what's going on than I do, but for our very active, very involved kids, you know, which is not uncommon, they're taking 4 AP classes, they're taking, you know, they're involved in extracurriculars. Are they not using that release as kind of a study hall, catch up on work time, and instead they're going to be in yet another course, and so they're going to be adding yet additional responsibilities to the, you know, another curriculum class where they've got extra work generated from the class and less time to work on what they've already committed to. And I'm just concerned about the mental health
Sure.
of an overextended generation who's very, very, very busy.
Sure. So I would say that we have some that use it and are very productive with their time off. I would say that there's some that may not use it as much and are less productive. But one of the pieces that we're looking at being able to implement, and part of the reason we want to like test the waters with the dual credit and the AP, is we're looking at, we have found out that there is some opportunities for us to maybe use like a dual credit working lab with a room that we might have open at the high school next year. And so there's some things like that we're looking at, trying to implement some of those pieces. So Ms. Watts, I would say that nothing that we've put up here is currently set in stone.
Sure.
If we see that we're needing that work time for kids and they're using it with good purpose, and we can develop a math lab or an English lab or something like
Just
that.
an overall general study hall time.
Yes.
If you had a place to put them.
Just as she just mentioned, when we discovered that she found that MCC provides tutoring for that, we can provide a course setting for kids to be in the building.
Right.
And functioning from that dual credit perspective. It's being flexible through that, but we can't be flexible when kids are just gone. And
Totally agree,
we
right.
can be flexible when they're here, and we can help maneuver students through that process.
And I think our goal is to teach them how to be responsive to what they need their junior and senior year for what they're going to need to do in college. Be prepared to sit down and work on the dual credit work that may be all virtual. You know, some classes are still virtual at the moment, but some are face-to-face. And then that just gives them an opportunity to sit down, to focus, you know, in a little more structured environment before we just open the doors and say, go and take care of yourself.
So more accountability and maybe some study time as
Yes.
opposed to just a place filler class that they don't really need because they're not allowed to have a release period.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of the intent of that advanced academic release for the junior. It's going to be more of a setting like that where they have an opportunity to work on those advanced classes that they're taking. That's why it's kind of a trial and error for next year, and then the year after we would be looking to try and maybe throw some other options in there.
And with our current waiver system where students can select courses that are not necessarily, that they wouldn't normally take due to GPA pieces, they could fill out the waiver, the GPA waiver, still take those courses because they were interested,
Right.
not because they had to, and engage in those different pieces.
Gotcha. Cool. Thank you.
I was going to say, it's good to be certainly forward-thinking on all this. As I've talked about before, last year was a great economic development year for our community, and this year is going to exceed that. So really, if you look at what's the workforce that's going to be needed in the next 18 to 24 months is probably 3,000 to 5,000 more people in our marketplace. Most of those jobs are on this side of town, so there's going to be a lot of pressure, and opportunity. I think a lot of that will get filled by high school students getting engaged in the workforce at an earlier point in their life, whether it's part-time or seasonal or whatever. So anyway, it's a great time, and really if we make it, partner with some companies. I mean, a lot of them are gonna be counter service jobs because we all wanna be able to go get a hamburger when we want one, but there probably are some great CTA-related jobs too. We go cultivate those partnerships with employers, so.
Well, and I would say that we saw some of that this summer with, our kids interning with the HVAC company this summer, specifically where our kids that were in our engineering classes were going in and doing some of the intro level work on.
You can say it was capstone.
Yes, it
That's
was
okay. You
capstone.
don't have to-
But I
you
mean,
don't
it
have to hide
it
that
was
fact.
great to see our kids
Yes.
that had learned things in the classroom that they could do hands-on right there inside our own building. And so we would love to see more of that put together just across the entire community. So.
Our work program went to the wayside when release periods. We had it at Midway High School, and it went to the wayside when release periods came about in 2013, 2014. We still have lots of kids that are working that can earn credit for working, and we can build that side of things to provide.
Oh, that's awesome.
Those necessary.
Well, and they get a class period where they get taught, different skills and different things just about being a good employee overall. And then they can go up to, 10 hours out in the community in a week and get their own job and pull a paycheck and get high school credit at the same time.
So we could offer a how to be a good employee class, is that what you're
It's
saying?
already in there. It's part of the CP program. Mhm.
They actually coordinate between our campus and the high school campus, and we're teaching it face-to-face and not through Ingenuity this year. And it's been great. They're actually doing a tour of MCC together, even though they're on two different campuses.
That gives me hope.
And I don't want to, denigrate counter service jobs or waiting tables. I mean, I wait tables through college, and some of those skills I still use every day.
Right.
Just basic customer service and, how not to spill things on people, right? I mean, it's good,
How to de-escalate
good
a
things to
situation.
know, so.
One of the ideas in the PLC between her campus and our campus was writing a grant to teach etiquette and then letting them go to the Baylor Club and practice some of these things.
Yeah.
So they're much needed skills that have been skipped over for years, and there's a huge need for that.
Yeah, it's good. All right.
I'm excited.
Good job. All right, we have the consent agenda then, minutes from our August meeting, our annual resolution on the 4-H, approve the remote homebound waivers, our furniture proposal from Huckabee, the CMAR for the middle school that we talked about earlier, the virtual school instructional plan that Becky visited with us about, budget amendments, and then 2 out-of-state trips. So does any board member wish to remove any item from the consent agenda?
I'd like to pull number 4.
All right, number 4.
I would like to pull number 8 for discussion.
Number 8. So do we have then a motion to, any others? I want to skip. If not, then do we have a motion to approve consent items number 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, and 9?
So moved.
Motion by Mr.
Second.
Alford, second by Mr. Tullis. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. We'll take them up in order. Number 4 first.
So I just had a question on the fee, 111,000, sounds like a lot to be buying furniture. I don't really know how hard that job is. And so I just wanted a little more, I guess, just talk about it a little bit more. Is there somebody in-house we could do, or I don't know, there's still like a lot of money that we could spend on some of these other lists that we were just talking about.
Well, in-house, no. That would be difficult because of the, as I'm trying to get to my
That's
notes.
on page 191.
It is just a request because they do provide an outstanding service in this area. In terms of being able to plan every detail that's needed when you're opening a brand-new school. Alone, this to me is worth it for Park Hill alone, but this also includes River Valley working with us to also, we have still work to do, but evaluating what we're keeping, what works at each school, then developing specs, and then helping the business office. When you're procuring, I think that number, I can't remember what I put in my notes, how much the budget overall is, $7 million just in the furniture. So, being just, you know, less than 1.5% of that fee that they're charging, I think you would almost save it because you'd save it in waste. We wouldn't have as much waste in terms of over ordering or not ordering correctly. That would be their job to ensure, and also working with the various vendors and taking those questions, and then on the end of that, being sure it's been installed correctly, being sure that it's what we expect and what we wanted.
What I saw in the packet was just a lot of consultation on their end through the entire process, including working with staff, working with the department, like you said, working with the vendors, getting it in place. I mean, they're investing a lot of time and know-how and taking input and synthesizing that into the final decision, so.
It's really kind of turnkey where they take care of that and we just.
Right, I mean, it would.
Are they handling installation too? Is that what you said?
Well, I mean, a lot of times your vendors will install, but it'll be inspecting that it got installed correctly.
Furniture training session
You know,
if
furniture
necessary, which
companies,
sounds a little unusual in this, but having seen some of the modular flex furniture, there is some training involved because you have components that can be used so many different ways, and they want to make sure our teachers can get the most out of what it is that we've actually bought. It's not just tables and chairs, it's things that can do all kinds of things.
And I think one of the values is they work in this world all the time, so they know what furniture's out there, the newest thing, what's working, what's not working, where the future's going, what the science says. I think that adds a lot of value.
Just having gone through the building process of the Ag Science building, I can tell you that not having that person doing that part of the job, I mean, Tom Garrett's son and Dr. Newsom's time sitting side by side with Mary Kay doing the ordering, and then it becomes a process of, oh, this is delivered, oh, that's delivered, where do we store that? Like, it's just a constant, somebody's gotta be on top of it. And that was one of the things when I talked to Buddy and Ward, like I said, moving forward for CTE, the specific equipment that we're gonna be ordering for like the hospital labs and I just feel like some of that is very finite things that have to be ordered that they know all the specifications for. So that's just my 2 cents.
No, that all makes sense. It just seemed like a big number. Those are all great reasons, so.
I just need the help.
Yeah,
No, that makes total sense.
and our staff needs the help.
Okay.
We're saving money in staff.
That's a good
time.
question.
It is a big number.
Always.
Yeah.
You want to move, we accept that item number?
I move we accept item number 4.
All right. Motion by-
Second it?
Motion by Dr. Popejoy, second by Ms. Vick. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Meister Singer's out-of-state trip, number 8.
So let me sort of give a little background on why I asked this to be pulled off the agenda. And some of you may already know, but I actually Thursday had heard from a couple of parents who were concerned about this particular trip, even before this was on our agenda. So I have really 2 things here, and one, I feel like in email conversations with Mr. Umhofer and Mr. Rice that they've addressed a lot of, but I want to at least get this in front of you all. The second one really hasn't been addressed, and it's sort of the bigger question. So I've got a choir kid that graduated 2 years ago. I know a lot of you have. I know Pam obviously has had a lot of experience there as well, but and had to miss the trip in 2020 when it was canceled, the trip that they took, and which was just, you know, it was pretty devastating because you hear about that all the way back into middle school. And so the concern with this trip that was brought to me by, at this point, it's the parents of 7 kids, and I'm hearing that there's maybe as many a dozen or more, is that the choice of this location is requiring for Midway to make sure that everyone who goes is vaccinated for COVID. And there are just, you know, a dozen or a couple of dozen probably parents who have said, we just can't do that with our kids. And the first concern then was, could we approach this and find a way for these kids that have been in choir for 6 or 7 years to actually get to take a trip with Meister and not have to miss that? Like I said, I have huge respect for our choir program. I'm a huge fan of the Rices. My daughter got an enormous amount out of that program. So I am not here to second guess that decision necessarily. I did want to raise that because parents have raised it with me. The second thing, though, as I looked into that, is the concern about Governor's Order GA 39, which specifically one of the things it says is that public entities like ours are not allowed to inquire or to require documentation of COVID vaccination status to enter any place, which would include this trip. I know it's not a required trip, so clearly we're not requiring anyone to go on the trip, but we are asking for them to document that they've been vaccinated. So my name's already on a lawsuit from the state, even though they spelled it wrong. And so before we just, moved ahead with this with a voice vote, I wanted to at least get those two issues in front of the board for you all to consider.
Comments?
Daryl, what's the sense of kids that have admitted that this would be an issue for them? Are you getting the same numbers from Mr. Price?
As far as I know, Mr. Rice has talked to 4 parents, but those are the parents that have contacted him. And there are 35 that have submitted that they're intending to go on the trip right now.
And how many are in the program? How many total in the program total?
72 Meister centers in the program, approximately 80 11 and 12th graders that would be on.
And are there other alternative trip destinations they could take where they get the same opportunities and experience where they would not be required to vaccinate? And we saw something just today when you and I spoke. I think Chicago was one of the destinations you mentioned, and they are coming out saying they may be requiring vaccinations as well. So they may, is there some place really neat that they could go and get the same experience where this would not be an issue?
To answer your question, no, there is no other experience like New York City, especially when you're a choir student and the opportunity to be on, go to Broadway shows on Broadway and to sing in performance venues that are not high schools or auditoriums, but to sing in historical places and cathedrals and things like that. There are other opportunities for kids. The reason that the high school choir has chosen New York for so many trips is because of those opportunities that are more choir specific.
And it's an optional trip. They're not required to go.
No one is required to attend. They're encouraged because it's like Mr. Wood was saying, it's the spring trip of their choir existence. So, but there's no requirement, there's no grade to it, there's no curriculum to it, there's no audition, anything like that. It's just an extra spring trip, and it's funded totally by the students. There's no midway funds involved.
So historically, Daryl, because as I understand it, the groups have made the decision to go there a number of years in the past. How many students historically have made the trip out of the group versus what you're seeing this year?
We've had as few as 35 and as many as 65 or 70 of that 78. The trip to Austria a while back was quite expensive, so that number was quite low. And when they went to San Francisco, their numbers were down a little bit for the same reason. It was a whole lot of money for a short amount of time, and parents just didn't want to do it.
Have you heard from any parents that are just concerned about COVID in general and rather do something in Texas that wouldn't be that?
Mr. Rice told me that he's had one parent concerned about COVID in general and has lots of what-if questions that we've already addressed and talked about. And it's the same what-if, like we're having, what if Sergio has COVID? It's those questions.
Okay. That wasn't very nice.
Students choose the destination, or how did that get chosen?
It's chosen, there is input from the students. For this particular trip has been, like he was saying, it's been on the docket for a while now, and it's
to our discussions with the students about having a musical, they were like, we don't care, we have to have one, we have to get back to doing something normal. And so the Rices were telling me that there was student input, there was parent input, that yes, we still want to go, and we want to see those shows in that space and sing in that location.
Of course, given where we are now, this was the trip, we had paid our money in, we're all set to go in the spring of 2020, and then COVID shut the entire world down, and then there was discussion of potentially doing something 2021 that wasn't able to be accomplished. So I know that there's more emotion, I would imagine, tied to finally being able to go, because it's been 3 years since we've been anywhere.
Even though it's a different set of kids, unfortunately, there is that emotional tie.
And if you want to make arrangements to bring alumni along, I know you could get some chaperones, so.
Yeah, and let me say too, that I don't raise this because I think we shouldn't do the trip. I mean, I feel like a lot of these kids have been in this choir program for a long time. It's a fantastic program. They represent Midway well, and I think it's a good reward opportunity for them. And I also am aware that you're never going to make everybody happy with every decision you make. I've learned that well over the last few months here, but I felt like it should at least be discussed, as well as the potential legal ramifications of the order. So.
You don't have any, what about the legal? Are we in the clear?
I mean, in the clear, to me, I guess, again, if you look at the current executive order, that's in Texas. This is a trip to New York.
Okay.
New York is requiring it.
Right.
So, again, you're crossing state lines. I didn't see it as a legal, issue that we're requiring it for something related to Texas. I didn't see that it crosses it, because that's a unique Texas order, not.
So if they could pay the money, get on the plane, get off the plane, and not be allowed to do anything once they were there, but.
I guess so,
Yeah, I
right,
guess
'cause it's
That's
a New
not,
York
we're not
requires a vaccine.
making them though.
To go to the shows, yeah. But they could just go hang out in New York
Yeah.
and not go to the shows.
What are we really approving? This is a voluntary trip that sponsors are taking kids on. We're not paying for it. I mean, I don't.
It's just been customary that the boards have approved out-of-state trips.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's all.
And this
so
one has had some
From a
concerns.
legal.
But they're not
I'm
missing
a
any
lawyer, but,
school
I mean,
or
I don't think
anything.
we're doing anything with any action. Would you think, Pete?
I mean, as a matter of our board policy, that's why it comes to the board for approval, because our board policy says the board's got to approve out-of-state trips. I mean, so it's a requirement because our policy says it, but our policy says that because that's what the board adopted, and the board can always unadopt a policy.
Just a question about the governor's order. I mean, we're not demanding these shows of vaccine proof. I mean, that's.
No, in my view, I mean, I think it's a point somebody could raise and try to make. I don't think at the end of the day, if you took it all the way to a lawsuit and a decision, I don't think it's a point that wins, but you don't know that until somebody goes and tries it. But I'm not sure under these circumstances, if this were a church group that were doing this with a group of their kids, they're gonna have to make that same decision. I mean, the bottom line is, we live in a day and a time where every one of us is gonna have to make decisions about what we're willing to do, or as it were, not do, give up, not participate in, miss out on, based on what different cities, states, whoever are requiring. And it's a tough position to put high school students in right now, that they've got to make this decision at this point in their life. But that's New York, that's not us, to answer your question, Andy, in my opinion.
Yeah, obviously it's New York's policy, but the concern I had is that Mr. Rice's email to parents specifically said that Midway is requiring all students to be vaccinated to go. And so that's where, here in Texas, we're telling Texas parents and Texas kids that they have to be vaccinated and provide evidence, provide documentation for that. So that's where my concern was.
And did you see the email by chance? Have you?
I have it, yes.
You have, so it does say that, okay.
It does.
Does he need to perhaps reword
Yeah,
that?
probably needs to change that, I would think, but,
Well, I think it's back to Pam's point.
yeah. I mean, you'd
I
have
don't think
to,
we can tell anybody they've got to be vaccinated to go and have to prove it. I didn't know that until you just said that, Colin. I don't think we can do that. I think somebody wants to go. they might not be able to do anything once they get there. It's just like somebody's, sign up and pay their money and then refuse to wear a mask, and they're whatever American or
airline.
Southwest or whoever isn't gonna let them on the plane. So be sort of foolish to do that, but if that's what you wanna do, you can pay your money and then refuse to put on the mask, and you're not gonna ride on the aircraft, so.
Colin, did you have a suggestion or an alternative or proposal you're wanting?
Well, I mean, I guess my first approach to this, before this was even on our agenda, was going to be to approach Mr. Rice to get the history of this and see if they've considered other options. But at this point, I mean, I think this is clearly where the program wants to go, and I think that it sounds like the majority of the board is comfortable with just approving it as we are, and I'm okay if I'm the only one that disagrees. So maybe we just proceed with that.
But maybe he needs to change his letter or send out something else that says it's not required by Midway. And maybe we have a sponsor or one of the chaperones that would be willing to do something with the kids that didn't want to go or couldn't get into the Broadway shows because they aren't vaccinated. I don't know what.
Well, it's the Broadway shows and restaurants both.
Oh,
Indoor-
restaurants.
indoor
Oh,
dining.
restaurants. Oh,
Indoor dining
restaurants.
locations.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, okay. I think we definitely need to change the wording on the
Well, they
letter.
just need to know what the consequences are if they go and they're not
Unvaccinated. They're
vaccinated,
not
based
vaccinated.
upon the current regulations in New York.
They're gonna
Which,
sit in their
which
rooms.
I
Let's
guess
just
could
spell that
change
out.
between now and March,
That's
right?
true.
Certainly
You never
could.
know,
Absolutely.
for the better or the worse.
Any of this could change.
Yeah.
Clearly, that is true.
It could be that come March, nobody's going on the trip anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to say that, I hope that's not true.
It happened 2 years ago.
It's happened 2 years in a row.
Hey,
And I just think,
no, I said I hope that's not true. I'm not a pessimist. I'm a realist. I'm a realist.
and I think Mr. Umhoff or Mr. Rice, Mrs. Rice will monitor attendance, meaning if more and more students back out of it, then they know that they're not gonna go with just a few students. I mean, it's not worth that if they see that becomes an issue, or a bigger issue with more and more families.
Well, that's why I asked the question I asked, because I agree completely. If you've got 70, 75, 80 people in it, and you're only gonna have a dozen that are gonna make the trip,
We reduce,
It's not cost effective to take under a certain number.
so if you don't hit the numbers you need to hit to make it a feasible trip, then we can revisit this and do something else.
And that would be the case for any trip, anywhere, anytime. We've had it happen with other groups on in-state trips, where, hey, not enough students wanted to go to Galveston for the weekend, so it just didn't happen. And so, that's already in place on the back.
And you're used to pivoting under those kind of circumstances,
You
because
said it better than anybody.
I mean, they would know soon, the registration deadline says it's September 30th, so this will all be resolved one way or the other in the next week and a half, but the email specifically says, due to NYC and Broadway show vaccination requirements, we are requiring all trip participants to be vaccinated.
We'll have that in, we'll make sure that Mr. Wright changes.
Thank you.
can we get copies on that? Would that be okay?
And
all
thank
right,
y'all for
any
the
further
conversation, too.
discussion here? We have this as a action item, folks, so if somebody wants to pass this, there needs to be a motion and somebody else willing to second that motion. Motion by Ms. Watts,
Second.
second by Ms. Vick. I think we've had all the discussion, but I'll ask anyway, any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Motion passes 6-1. I assume everybody else voted. Consideration of a resolution to nominate a candidate for the MCAD board for the 22-23 calendar, I think it's sort of calendar years as I recall.
I think you're exactly right, yes. So this will be for the full 2 years, right?
Yes, sir, 2-year term, 22-23.
Yeah, in your board packet, I would certainly have visited with our current representative, Jonathan Green. He, remember, filled the unexpired term of Tom Pagel, and he's been serving in that capacity. Just coincides that you have to begin this process of of entities nominating individuals to serve on the board of the McLennan County Appraisal District now. In September, those go out, and then by, I think, mid-November, you have to have that turned in, ballots counted and everything. So I visited through email correspondence with Mr. Green, and he's more than happy to accept a nomination for a full term. So that would be my recommendation. Midway's nominee for a seat on the appraisal board.
Very good. We have a motion to approve the administration's recommendation.
Can I ask a question first?
Sure.
Do we nominate only one, or can we nominate more than one and then only vote for one? Is that how it works?
No. We can nominate as many as we want. We can cast our ballots however we choose to cast them when the time comes, and we can give them all to, we can vote for somebody we didn't even nominate. So how we vote later on has nothing to do with who we nominate now, but unless an individual is nominated by one of the entities, then they don't show up on the ballot. Keeping in mind that the total number of votes to be cast is 5,000, and those are prorated out among all the entities based on the value of that entity's property values to the overall values as a whole. That's why we basically have enough votes if we cast them all for one person to elect a person of our choice, as does the city of Waco, as does McLennan County, as does Waco ISD. So 4 of the 5 slots basically can be controlled by those 4 entities.
You've talked to Jonathan, he's
Yes.
doing well,
And the Collins question that's on page 214, as you can see, even the resolution, they just put 5 slots.
That's 5 slots.
Right. I mean, but it can be even more than that. But generally, there's not a lot standing in line to be nominated for this role, because it's not, as I said, it's just not necessarily a glamorous role, but Jonathan had enjoyed it. The short time he's been on, is willing to serve the community in this capacity, and I don't have any other, I haven't, unless the board.
Yeah, a board member can do it if you're interested, Colin. Yeah.
That is contacted.
We've usually had,
to nominate.
Well, and here's why I ask is when we put Mr. Green on this last summer, and it was clear that wasn't a member of the board, I did have a conversation with a local businessman who said he might be interested in that, and I would love to at least let some of you visit with that person and see what your thoughts are. So I don't know if I could move that we add a second nominee or how we do that. I would love to do that, and I'll tell you who it is too.
Well, that's fine.
Okay. I think some of you know Scott Salmons. He's the CEO of WRS Group here in town. He's involved with Waco Chamber Advisory Board, Waco Industrial Foundation Board, Waco Business League, Baylor grad, also with an MBA, lives here in Midway as well, longtime resident, and as he said, a longtime taxpayer personally and corporately as well, and has a really solid business background and history here in the community. And I think he would be a good asset to the board of MCAD in that respect, and would love for some of you to at least visit with him and see. So I guess I move that we add him as well as a nominee.
Well, let's do them separately, just
Okay.
so we're clear on that. So do we, first off, I don't think we even have a motion on the first one, do we? I don't think anybody made a motion on that. So you made a motion for him.
Okay, yes, for Scott
Well, we
Salmons.
can take that one up first, because you made a motion, Colin.
Fair enough.
So we have a motion by Mr. Witt for Scott.
Does anyone else know Scott?
He's my neighbor.
Yeah, I know
Okay.
Scott.
He lives right down the street from me.
Is there a second to that motion?
Sure, I'll second it.
I'm sorry.
I will second.
All right, second by Ms. Vick. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Then we also have Mr. Green. Is there a motion to nominate Mr. Green?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Watts. Is there a
Second.
Second by Mr. Tullis. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion also carries. Very good.
Okay.
We have 2 nominees.
This is almost unprecedented.
I know.
And neither of them are board members, hallelujah.
Something's in the water.
Okay, so personnel, we need a motion to approve the professional recommendations.
Yes, sir, but I apologize. I have 3 names that actually should have been brought down under updates. They were hired as professionals, so the only names that I need the board
Okay, so the administration's recommendation is for those individuals just named. Do we have a motion to approve that recommendation? Motion by Ms. Watts.
That was Ms. Vick, actually.
I'm sorry.
It was all right. It was me,
The,
the math.
well, and the dividers. Motion by Ms. Vick, I stand corrected, seconded by Mr. Witt. Did I get that right? I heard somebody down here say it. Okay. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Anything else on personnel? No need to go in closed session on personnel. That's a good answer. But we do need to go into closed session, but we got superintendent's communications we'll take up first. Do we have any?
Just please make note of your red folder there for the Tasby Convention, has all the details. I think Carolyn put all that together for you. Again, Friday and Saturday and the morning of the Sunday to get your workshop hours in as a trustee. So I'll look forward to seeing you there. Hopefully it's pretty self-explanatory, so everything you need should be in your folder.
Any breakout sessions you wanted to call our attention to, anything you
I
want?
haven't had time to go through the book yet. It's
Well, if you-
online.
And you're not doing any sessions.
yeah.
You are doing?
No,
some?
presenting, no.
Presenting, that's what I mean, okay.
Well, if you come across things that you think are a must-see,
thank you.
please
Yeah.
let us know.
I will.
Is that it?
That's it. I've talked enough tonight.
All right, I won't comment. So at 9:23, we're going to go into closed session under 551.071 and 551.082 and 0821 of the Texas Government Code.